Hello everyone. This is a quick tutorial video over how I form reeds, which is in the new Italian style, which was created by Giorgio Versiglia. You will be able to do this with any gouge-shaped or profiled cane. You can get your GSP cane from any source that you like, whether if the bark is scored or not scored. I prefer that the bark is not scored. This is also not exclusive to a particular shape. This should work with any shape, whether if it has a flare on the end or not. Some additional tools that you will use for this are a set of files. We are going to be using a coarse grit file and then also a light grit file. This is probably around 200 grit, and then the light will be right at 400 grit. I like these big pillar files. They're very handy to use and to help do what we need to do on the reed, something that's a bit wider. The next thing we're going to use are a set of mandrels. The first mandrel that we are going to use, mine is from the company that Giorgio Versiglia made, which is Andante and Rondo. I believe other companies, Reeds and Stuff, has made something very similar called the anti-crack forming mandrel. You will notice that the mandrel looks much different because there is an actual shorter end on this rather than the traditional long forming mandrel that tends to be quite long, and this shorter one I find has a lot of advantageous properties to it. Then I have my mandrel that I like to use, which is my Andante and Rondo mandrel. I believe, again, Reeds and Stuff makes one very similar to this. This is also based off of the old Rieger style mandrel, if you happen to have that. We will also be using a knife. You may use your reed knife. This is just a hobby knife that has an X-Acto blade on it. And then finally, we will use some wire. However thick gauge wire you use, I use 22 gauge, so that is what I will be using. For this first step, what we will do is we are going to start off by beveling. Since we are going to be scoring all the way through the tube of the reed, we are going to need to make sure that we do our bevel before we do our scoring. The very first thing that we are going to do is we're going to take our flat file and we are going to put our thumb and our index finger pinching right underneath where that collar is. And you notice if I do that, my index finger is going to be just right where that collar is. So as I bevel, which I am going to start if I'm looking at a clock, and this is 12 o'clock, I'm going to look 5 minutes past, and I'm going to go up and down. Sometimes it's easier if you brace the reed a little bit. So, and then we are going to bevel up and down the reed, and you can see now that this side has been beveled and this side has not. We are going to repeat that side on each 4 of the corners. So I switch over and I do the same over here. So you're going to and finally swap over here, do the same. You can see I'm not really too concerned about the angle or the depth, I guess I should say. I'm going back and forth each time once. Try to get this other side. Excellent. So now that all 4 sides are beveled, one of the things that you may notice if you start using this method is your tenor register may be a little bit on the lower side. you may need to round out your tubes a little bit more. And what I find that helps with that is doing an additional bevel. This is completely optional. If you feel very comfortable with your reeds, you do not need to do that. However, what we're going to do is we're going to do a very small bevel, about a centimeter, up along the inside of the blade of the reed. So again, same concept. I'm going to pinch and I'm going to bevel. Luckily, this file is the exact width that I want. So I'm just essentially, you can think about this blending into the tube of the reed. And I find that this allows my reeds to be a little bit more round and really help out with the tenor register. Again, beveling on the blade of the reed, completely optional, but if you find that you need to do it, it is a great thing to do. So we already have our center scoring line here. The next step is that we are going to submerge this into water. I am going to soak this piece of cane for roughly 5 minutes. After I've soaked my reeds for roughly 5 minutes, I'm going to take them out of the water and I'm going to begin putting the wire on. Just to clarify though, I soak my reeds up to 5 minutes at this point. I find that soaking them any longer makes the cane a little spongy at this point, and also kind of makes the cane itself very brittle. So I would advise that you try soaking your cane this amount of time if you're not used to doing that in your forming process. So my cane is going to come out. It has been soaking for maybe 5 minutes or so. The very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to fold my cane. I just take any flat edge. I just saw my ruler there. So I'm going to take it. I'm going to put the center scoring line just above the ruler, and I'm going to gently push over. If you feel that you have a lot of resistance when you do this, I would advise that you double check, make sure that you are right over that center scoring line. So now that I have my reed right here, I am going to take my brass wire and I am going to put it on my reed. Now, traditionally, if we are to put wires on reeds, a lot of times when we tie the reed on, the knot will be right in the center of the reed. Since we'll be switching our first wire anyway in this forming process, what I do is I actually put my knot on the side of the reed. And the reasoning for that is that I found that when I do this process, the chance of me getting very odd-shaped tubes is greatly diminished. So if you find that in your forming process that this is an issue, you may want to take a look at adding this into your forming process. So I am going to take my reed, I'm going to have my wire facing this way, and I'm going to wrap 1, 2, and then on the third, I'm going to leave it out and then put on the tie. So I'll demonstrate that. So as you can see here, I have my wire. I'm going to put my thumb and over, and then I'm going to wrap under, cut my wire. Now I have my wire right here. I am going to scoot it up into position. You can see it's pretty low. I also put this fairly loose on the reed so that I can easily maneuver it. Then I am going to tie my loop over here, as I would, exact same as if this was in the center of the reed. That will be fine. Now I'm going to take my pliers, I'm going to hold the reed as such, and I'm going to pull out. And I'm going to get this. I have my first wire right at around 1 millimeter from the collar, measuring from the top of the wire. And there we go. We now have our first wire put on our reed. Now that we have our first wire on the reed, we are going to go on ahead and score the tube. So this may shock a few people. This is usually where a lot of beginner students feel very uncomfortable. I'm going to do my best to verbalize what I am doing as I am scoring this, so that you as a viewer will not be so shocked. I will say that I have done this multiple times and I have never once injured myself. So we are going to take our reed. I am going to hold very firmly, again using my index finger and my thumb, holding this reed. I am going to take my blade right here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to make 2 incisions on each side of the tube. We're going to start just about 1 millimeter in from the tube on the outside, and that is going to go up about 1/3 of the reed. Our second incision is going to go up about 2/3 on the reed, and then as we get to that 2/3 portion, we are going to angle out our blade. We are also going to repeat this on the other side, going 1/3 up the tube, not angling out on that first one. And then the second one, we're going to go 2/3 up and we will angle out. So to demonstrate, what I'm doing is I'm rocking my knife back and forth. I am not putting any pressure on my knife moving forward. I am finding sort of these channels in the tube of the reed, and in that way I am letting the blade do the work. This way, in scoring like this, you will not injure yourself. If you try to push on the reed blade, if you try to apply force, that is when the blade will go up and you will cut yourself. However, if you again find the channel, you can see how it's splitting just like that. And I'm just wiggling back and forth about up to that point, and that's it. I'm going to repeat on the other side, finding kind of that channel. You can see that it took immediately. It's going down, and I'm about the point that I want to go. Next on the inside, wiggle, 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 turn, and there you go. We have done our first set of scoring. We will do another round of scoring after this, but first, since this reed has been out of the water, I'm going to resubmerge it for maybe about a minute or so. So after I resubmerge, we'll take it back out and we'll continue the process. Before we dive into the next portion of forming, which is forming the tube, I just want to take a quick second to kind of explain what all is going to happen. And kind of the science behind this forming mandrel. Because this portion up here, which will be inserted into the tube of the reed, is at a very drastic taper, the idea is that by the time that the reed is inserted all the way down to the bottom of this mandrel, this point should be right at about where the first wire is, which at this point in the forming process is the strongest part on the reed. By putting all of this force on the first wire of the reed, it's going to prevent any crack from going up into the blade of the reed, versus those older style of mandrels, which are much longer, which tend to promote cracks going into the blade of the reed. That is sort of the science behind this mandrel. If you want to try it for yourself, but do not want to, maybe you're not able to get this type of mandrel for one reason or another, a nail punch pin is a great alternative. I picked this up at Harbor Freight for, oh gosh, maybe about $2 or $3. They usually come in a set of 3, going from 1 32nd inch to 2 32nd inch or 1/16, and then 3 32nd. This is going to give something very similar, although it's not as refined as this tool is. It should give a very similar result. I actually prefer these ones from Harbor Freight. I like the coating on these. It allows these mandrels to easily be inserted. So that is just a quick plug if you are wanting to try this for yourself. So on to the forming process. We are now going to form the tube. I'm going to remove my reed from the water. And what I am going to do is I am going to be inserting this into the reed. So once again, I'll hold the reed. I will do my best to demonstrate this. So I am going to insert, and at this point, I no longer can put the reed in. It's not because I'm pressing on the blades, it's just because the tube is very flat. So what I am going to do is I am going to turn the reed around, out, kind of helping this tube open up. I'm also, one thing I always check is to make sure that the blade isn't angling up or down, that it's nice and straight. And you can notice that once I do that, that it will want to go in just a wee bit further. I'm going to repeat this process. Typically, unless you have a really narrow tube on your bassoon reed, you should be able to get this very easily all the way down. And I don't think I've ever had a shape that is outright rejected. So once that is complete, we are going to remove this, and you can see no cracks along the blade of the reed. We are now going to score 2 more times on each side. So each of these are going to go up 2/3 of the way, and I am going to turn out. So the same process, in, up, out. Out, so that the center of the reed is kind of the thickest part, or at least as well as what you can. Finally, I am going to take my forming mandrel, or my standard mandrel, and I'm going to try to get the reed all the way down to this line. So, and it's going to be the same process as my forming mandrel, my anti-crack. Side to side, opening that tube up. This usually goes on pretty simple. And there you have it. Finally, the last thing that we are going to do is we are going to put on our bottom wire. So in this video, I will refer to this as the 3rd wire, as this is probably the most familiar name for this wire. Even though that we will have 2 wires on this, I still call this the 3rd wire. So what I am going to start doing is I will be wrapping the reed right about where I would have the 2nd wire. I am going to put it on, and I am going to keep it fairly loose, but tight around the tube, but not too tight. So now I'm going to maneuver it down the blade to the bottom of the tube. Then I will tighten it, and after that I am done forming this reed. This is how I do it. This is how I was taught at the University of Iowa when I studied with Benjamin Coelho. And the idea of this is that the wire will kind of help the internal dimension of the tube form to the mandrel much better. Now, other styles of this just simply put on the 3rd wire down here and call it a day. But I have noticed a bit of improvement. I also find that I need to have a little bit more round tubes, so I find a good benefit in adding this step. So just like the last time, we are going to hold our thumb down, except instead of having our twist on the side, it is going to be upright. So I'm going to go once, twice, 3 times around the reed. I'm going to cut the wire, put it right about where you would do a second wire. This measurement does not need to be super exact, as we will be remaneuvering this wire at a later point. I am going to angle this and then pinch and twist, and I will only do one twist at this point. I will make it a bit taut. Again, it's still very maneuverable. I can maneuver it with my fingers, which is the whole point. At this point, I'm going to take my pliers, really make sure that the tube is kind of forming to that mandrel. And I'm just with my fingernails going to scoot it down. Now, theoretically about 6 millimeters from the bottom, if measured from the bottom of this third wire. Now, that doesn't have to be exact. Sometimes I'll put it a little bit lower, but nevertheless. So here we go. We'll tighten this one more time. And there you have it. You can cut off the excess wire if you want. And then you can let the reed just rest on the table, like so. No need to use a drying rack in this forming process. We will be forming the tube in the next video, which will be going over how to do that. I appreciate the time that you spent watching this video, and hope you all have a great day.